today's presentation has a long title: Fitness, Facebook, Marathon, Google, Job Search. Suddenly, it all makes sense. And it started rather serendipitously. How many of you, let me just say, have not ever seen the movie Working Girl? You have not ever seen that movie? Really? Wow. Wow. Well, you ought to rent it or pull it up on something because it's so much fun. It's I just love that movie. It's one of my all-time favorites. But what? Of course it's a chick flick.
It's still a good movie.
But the villain is also a chick, you know. But it's also it's a movie that's about the little person. It's a movie about somebody who does not have a degree, who has a low-level job, is subservient to the corporation, but she's smart and she's street smart and she understands how to pull things together and see patterns and see movements and trends and things like that. And she loves the market and she loves the business world. And so anyway, so it's all about that and how and all of us do this. Sometimes you read an article somewhere and then you hear a conversation someplace, and then you meet somebody at a coffee shop, and each one offers up a little piece to this puzzle, and suddenly it's like, oh wow, there's an idea, or there's that's kind of how the Recruit Her started. Is that there have been lots of articles lately about companies that said our workforce is all the same age and the same color and the same gender, and maybe we should do something different. And so because there have been some indications that might be a trend, somebody created a company that would service that trend and say you can't find the talented people that you need in order to make your workforce more diverse. And so we will deliver those people to you. We will create a service that will fill that need. And that's what all job seekers are trying to do as well, is to be the person with the skill set that will fill a need that a company has. So anyway, so that's where I came from. And I said the job search is filled with surprises and serendipitous situations. And so the serendipitous piece is just the unexpected find, the unexpected discovery. So that's just how I got to this presentation, but it also is a huge part of a successful job search. Nobody remembers this guy probably, but early in the Launchpad membership, we had a man who was a network administrator and had quit his job. I think he worked at IBM, and had quit his job to take care of his ailing father. And he did that until his dad died, and then he had to settle a very large, complex estate. And then I think he even traveled after that a little bit on the little inheritance that he got. So it was 3 years without a job, and suddenly he's trying to go back to work. And so he kept applying and applying and applying, and he had this big gap, and they said, you've been unemployed too long, and you don't have any recent references, and so he was really struggling with this piece. But he was there were two things that he did for fun. He was a country western dancer and went to Go Dance, I think, and Dallas nightclub, and did dancing. And then he also was in Sierra Club. And while he was in a canoe with somebody on a canoe trip through Sierra Club, the guy said, so what do you do for a living? And he said, well, I'm not doing anything for a living right now. I'm a network administrator, and I'm trying to look for a job in that. And he said, well, we're looking for somebody like that in my company. Why don't you come work for me? So he got his job from being on a canoe trip. Serendipitous, and that happens all the time. So that's the only reference to Working Girl. The sources for this presentation also kind of popped up serendipitously. One of them was an article that I read. Somebody left at work this 2014 Austin Fit magazine that's got Tom Kite on the cover. And within that, there was an article about choosing success in times of transition. And it was all about changing from one fitness sport to another. Somebody had been an athlete in one sport and had an injury, couldn't do that anymore, and was having to transition to another sport. That's really all that was. And what were the steps that this person had to do in order to get through that transition. So all of us know about transition. Another one was 6 reasons your job search is like training for a marathon. I can't even remember why I had that. That was in a pile of stuff on my desk, but it seemed related. And then while I was researching, I think the program that I made last week, I found this YouTube video from this guy named Sean Lee. I suggested that all of you look it up because I thought it was so cool. He is, at the time he made the YouTube presentation, which I did find the date of that, it was in March of 2015. He was a student at the University of British Columbia, but his presentation was how to get a job for the Big Four. Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Facebook. And he said, you want to throw Apple in there, it's the same. It's all the same. All these big tech companies that everybody wants to work for, and they have thousands and thousands of applications, and very few people ever make it to be employed. And he was delivering this YouTube presentation primarily to folks who were either looking for internships or for their first job after graduation. And with all these young people, he said, get an internship first, get your foot in the door. It doesn't matter what they pay, although he did say, if I remember, that the big tech companies pay sometimes as much as $50,000 a year, $90,000 a year for an intern. I was going to let that settle in. So anyway, but that's where I got this particular one. Oh, and there's another source for this, and that is my husband's current obsession. He came up with this idea that he wants us to hike the Appalachian Trail, 2,000 miles, although he doesn't want to do the whole thing. He wants to go from Georgia to upstate New York, where my son lives, so then my son could meet us in New York with an ambulance, and we could have a little family visit.
Wow.
So 5 months of hiking.
I've got a T-shirt for this. I crossed the Appalachian Trail.
Oh, well, Patrick Bohr has a T-shirt that says he crossed the Appalachian Trail. Not impressed, Patrick. Maybe my husband is reading that person's blog, because he's reading about 50 other blogs about this trek. So anyway, this is his,
Yeah, don't try to find a restroom. Off the trail.
Oh, I did find the body. I mean, I did find the article. I did hear the article, I did not find the body. But I could imagine finding the body, being the body, all of that, yes, okay. So I'm also using information from his little obsession as well. So the first thing about running a marathon, getting fit, preparing for the Appalachian Trail, or looking for a job, is that you have to have a plan. So you research first to make sure that your goal is a viable goal, and then once you've gathered all your data, and of course with job hunting, it's what kind of job are you looking for? Is it something you love? Is it something that you care about, something you're passionate about? Why try to find another job that's just a boring, tedious, I've got to go to work because I have a family to support? See if you can find something that you care about, something that you love. Is it something you're good at? Can you get better at it, or are you as good as you will ever be at this? And then, is it something that the market is going to pay you for? Is it something that is employable and marketable? Is it something that you can actually do? So do some research, have a plan. If you're trying to prepare for a marathon, is anybody in here who's run a marathon? 1, 2, excellent. when you're going to train for a marathon or any other major physical activity, you want to have a plan. And lots of times when I've looked at marathon plans, they say have a short run one day, have a long run the next day, and then have a rest day, and then do some other things and so forth. Modify your diet, make sure that while you're in training mode, you monitor what you eat, and make sure you got some good running shoes and some gear and all of that sort of stuff. So that's all part of your plan. With the trail, my husband's joined a gym. We're supposed to have, this is our routine that we're supposed to be doing, but we haven't been very dedicated about it, that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we're supposed to go to the gym. Tuesday and Thursday, we're supposed to go run. And on the weekends, we're supposed to load up our backpacks with 35 pounds of stuff and go hike somewhere. That's our thing. Also assembling the gear, he's good at doing that. And then before you hike that trail, you're going to look at the entire map, and you're going to kind of figure out how many miles a day are you going to try to go, where are going to be your drop-off points. All of the blog people say that you're going to go through 2 or 3 pairs of shoes. You have to have them already broken in. You have to have somebody mail them to you, along with all of some other stuff. So anyway, you have to plan ahead. You have to know when is this stuff going to happen. In terms of the job search, your plan. What is your plan? Don't just start willy-nilly. That's not a verb. Willy-nilly. Applying for things without a plan. Assess your skills, figure out what you're good at, create your resume, your portfolio, your social media presence, and that sort of stuff. Create your resume, your portfolio. One of the things that Sean Lee said to these young folks was, you need to, if all you've been is a student, that doesn't mean that you can't create a portfolio of work that you've done. So what is it that you want to be? You want to be a web developer? Develop some websites. Have a body of work that you can say, this is the kind of thing that I can do. One of the things that we talk about in my interview preparation class that I teach on Wednesdays at the Workforce Office is what are some things that you can take with you into the interview so that the employers can visualize you in the job. Sometimes, in some cases, you can attach this to a portfolio or a resume or something like that. Years ago, I remember I had a client who was so shy. He just pathologically shy. He could not look people in the eye. He couldn't talk to people very well, but he was an absolutely fabulous technical illustrator. And on the back, that was sort of before you weren't supposed to put anything on the back of your resume, but when he would send out a resume, on the back of the resume, so that it was always part of that document, he would put examples of his technical illustrations. So it was like attaching a portfolio along with the resume. And so if someone is able to see the quality of work that you can produce, it helps tremendously. So at any rate, if it's possible, and not all jobs, not all companies, it's not possible for everybody. But if you're able to put together some sort of examples of the work that you can do, sometimes it's references, other things, get your social media presence taken care of. All of those are part of your plan. Identify your target companies. My advice is always that you identify companies in 4 different tiers. Your primary companies that you want to work for, and then the secondary ones, the tertiary ones, the ones you would do in a pinch if you had to, and then quaternary companies might be things that you really don't want to do, but they might be survival jobs for you. Sometimes for some people, the quaternary companies, the survival job is teaching, and it's only a survival job not because you don't like to do it, but because in general those jobs don't pay very well, but it's a way that you can still demonstrate your expertise in a certain area. So have a plan for what do I really want to do, and then your companies in each category, and then create a timetable. Maybe for the first 2 months of my unemployment, I'm going to concentrate only on the top tier companies. I'm going to see if they have any openings for me. I'm going to connect with the recruiters from those companies on LinkedIn. I'm going to see if I can get an informational interview with somebody on the inside of that company and so forth. So you're working your plan all the time. And then set weekly job search goals. That's where a SWAT team can come in handy. I mean, if you're self-motivated enough to do this on your own, that's great. But lots of times, left to our own devices, we just get depressed and we don't do it. A SWAT team can sometimes be the accountability group that will help you stay focused on your job search. Years ago, I had a man who had been a manager, program manager maybe, at Applied Materials. And Applied had a big layoff. This was right around the 2001 mark, so maybe around the dot-com bust. And he created a SWAT team of people that he had worked with at Applied, and they had all gotten laid off. And so he had this little SWAT team. He was his position at Applied was the senior position of all of those people. So he felt as though he was a role model for them. He had been at the company, and he felt that he should be a role model in the job search process as well. And they met every Friday in the morning, and they would set goals for the team. So they would say, in the next week, each person on the team should do one cold call, one informational interview at least, and go to 2 networking meetings and send out 15 resumes or whatever. And then the next week when they met, they would say, did you reach your goals? Somebody created a big Excel spreadsheet for this, and if you met your goal or came close to it, then your little box was filled out in green. And if you came close, it was yellow, and if you were really a backslider that week, then it was red. And he said, I hate looking for a job, I hate networking, I hate talking about myself, I hate every single piece of this operation. But I am very metric driven, and I want to be green. Kermit can tell you that's difficult. But what he said, what gets me out of bed on Monday is knowing that I have to report to that team on Friday. And I didn't want to let the team down, and I didn't want to be the one that didn't produce. And so set your goals, make them realistic, reward yourself, have fun when you reach your goals, but try to set job search goals that are very doable, not so hard that you can't make it. Sean Lee's advice when he said, you want to go to work for one of the big 4, first thing is you got to get an interview somehow. And everybody in the audience kind of went collectively, duh. And then he said, and then you have to do really well on the interview. So how are you going to get that interview? So then he talked about, the different pieces to that. So that was his plan, pretty basic. Get the interview, do well in the interview. And last week, the topic of the presentation was do something creative, do something out of the box. Differentiate yourself from the competition in some way. Maybe some of you can copy it down or take a picture of it or whatever. It was something that was on my LinkedIn group homepage, but it's an interactive resume that was created by a guy who's a graphic designer, and so it's kind of cute. But I've done presentations before on graphic resumes. If you ever want to see what in the world a graphic resume is, a standard text resume, the way all of us have, we have many examples of those, whether chronological, functional, or combination, targeted, whatever, but they're text. And then a graphic resume, the best examples I've seen are on Pinterest, and you can go into Pinterest and ask to see examples of graphic resumes. And it's always a one-page resume, and sometimes it'll have a timeline with images and arrows and different kinds of things, graphs, charts, showing what you did, where you excelled, and that sort of thing. But it's a one-page graphic piece. This one is somewhat animated. It looks like the early games. Looks kind of like a Mario kind of thing. And he is the Superman kind of guy. And you push your down key, and he jumps around from different things, and then It shows his work history. It shows his skill level. It shows the awards that he's won. So if somebody received a resume like that, but he's a creative, and so it obviously demonstrates his creativity in a very graphic way. But it's kind of fun to see. So one of the things that Sean had said was make sure you differentiate yourself. And since creating a resume is a big part of your plan, you want to make sure you have a really solid resume. This guy's resume is all interactive. Now I have to say, my reaction to it was really strong. I liked it a lot, and I always like presentation that's creative. I showed it to my husband and I said, isn't this cool? And he wasn't impressed. He said, I don't know. I don't know if I like it. But we're real different, so you may be figuring that out. All right. The second thing, so first thing is have a plan. Second thing is find or create a community. You want to get something done, you have a goal, you need help. You need a network. Who said that? Who named this group? The Magnificent Seven. You got something done, you get the best people you can think of. And we tell you this all the time. When you're looking for a job, you need to surround yourself with people that believe in you. You need to surround yourself with a small team. This could be your SWAT team. This could be your clublet. I think a SWAT team should be made up of the most positive, smart, creative, motivated, supportive individuals. Look good looking if you want. If you want them ethnically diverse, I don't know, that's great. But a team of people that are all helping each other find a job. My little thing that I needlepoint on all my pillows is that looking for a job is too scary to do alone. And that you need to surround yourself with a bunch of smart people and help each other find a job. Immediately, once you have a team that's helping each other, the whole process changes. It becomes way more fun. It becomes way more productive because you're looking for jobs for yourself and you're looking for jobs for each other. And the whole process is a way for you to create friendships that will serve you well throughout your career. The whole job search process these days has changed into networking. Who do you know? Who do you know on the inside of a company that will put in a good word for you? Sharing information, helping each other. What does this mean? Are you not working?
Oh no, just kidding, I'm just scared.
Oh, good. You're scaring me. Okay, Don Lujan, long time on and off Launchpad member, is working. He has a new job. He is a facilities engineer. I forgot where.
Something.
Hospira.
Yeah.
Hospira, the medical device company that's just been bought out by Pfizer. So he has a job. But see, when you have a group of people that know you and he has been very helpful to other people within this organization, and other people have been helpful to him. But it's a collaboration. It's a community. It's a community. And the job search process can be so isolating. And not only did you lose your job, but you lost a good chunk of your social life because they were affiliated with work. And so the job club is a very dynamic community. People come, people go, people share. And even we've got 15,000 people on our directory. And if you say, I need to see if I can get an informational interview with somebody in the health information systems, I'm going to go into my membership directory later on and see if I've got any Launchpad members who are currently working in that field or who have done that field and can give Roxanne some advice. So you have a huge pool now of people that are absolutely ready to help you. Don't try to do this alone. Create a community. If you're a marathon runner or an Appalachian Trail person, get a trainer. That's somebody who can be on your team that's going to help you. Join a running team. Join the Sierra Club. Join a backpackers group. My next door neighbor is a jock, and she does big primitive backpacking trips in Colorado every year. She goes to fitness camp every year. and she has kind of taken my husband under her arm and has said, okay, we're going to do this. Load up your backpack and we're going to do this. And so she's taking care of him. Online support groups. How many of you do some kind of fitness thing on Fitbit or whatever, where you you send your fitness information out to your Facebook group or whatever? Anybody in here do that? One? Really? Two? How many of you do that, but you're ashamed to tell us that you do that? Okay. All right. But they certainly enable you to do that. That, you know, if you've got any kind of an online little thing that says, okay, you've done your 10,000 steps or whatever, and it says you want to send this information out to your Facebook page, tell them that you did this. They want you to interact and to share, and generally it's easier to reach your goals when you have a team. In job search, a SWAT team is that kind of thing. The people that were laid off from Dell, was it Dell? Ooh, no, I can't remember. I think it was, I can't remember. Maybe it was Freescale. Anyway, some company had a big layoff, and those people from that department, 100 people or something like that, that all lost their jobs, they created a Facebook page for them, for their own little group. And they would announce job postings. They would meet every month for a brown bag lunch or something like that. And as people from the group went to work, they would give that information out, and then those people were now working and could share job lead information with the rest of the group. So, Facebook page, Facebook team is a good way to do it. Mentors, get people that will give you informational interviews, give you advice, keep them apprised of your job search, but create a community of people that are dedicated to helping each other. Sean Lee, one of the things that he did, he was a programmer and he was talking to programmers. He said, if any of you know these 4 languages or whatever it was, in fact, I think I brought those notes with me. He said, can you code Java, Python, or Ruby? You will be hired. He said they're all looking for people that can program in those codes. But of course, he did this in 2015. The world might be a very different place by now. But he used extensively the Cracking the Coding interview book. I'm going to buy half a dozen of those and make them available to people if they want. But it gives you close to 200 go to the board and write some code kinds of questions, and really helps you prepare for those difficult technical coding questions that you might be asked if you're a developer. And so he had eventually started out with one friend, and eventually he had 3 different people that they would do this with. He met with one on Monday and Wednesday, he met with one on Tuesday and Thursday, and he met with one on Friday. And they would spend a couple hours on a whiteboard. He said it doesn't help to do it on paper. You need to do these answers on a whiteboard, and you need to talk through your process, because that's what they want to hear. So when they say, go to the board, write a code for this kind of function, they want you to do it and to talk about why you're making the choices that you are. And all of those tech companies want you to do that. And so he would practice, and he said one of his friends who was in this little team of people who did it had an interview lined up with Amazon, and missed a midterm exam because he did this coding exercise. He said the job is more important to me than the exam. I'll try to make up the exam if I can, but I want to get this job. And so he did that. And Sean said, you may remember last week I told you that he was not a stellar student. His grade point average was 2.3. He said he was on Scope Pro for 4 years. But he said they didn't seem to mind that, as long as he could do well on the interview. And so he spent a great deal of time not only doing this himself, but helping other people to do this as well. So that was his community. Set goals, set big goals, and set small goals that you can reach so that you have lots of successes. Lots of successes. If an informational interview is just terrifying to you, then make that be, say I'm going to do one informational interview every month. And then when you succeed in that, have a huge celebration because you reached that goal. In the same way, if you're trying to run a marathon and you're increasing your long run by a mile each week or something like that, then when you reach those small goals, you need to celebrate. Have goals that you can reach so that you keep building up your success level continues to mount. I climbed Kilimanjaro one time, and I was living in East Texas at the time where our sea level, our elevation was 365 feet above sea level, and this was a 19,000 foot mountain. And so the other people in the group that were going to do it, they all lived in mountainous areas, and they trained by climbing a mountain and getting used to the lower oxygen level and the higher altitude and all of that. And I couldn't do that. And so physically, I trained by putting a backpack on, and every week I put another 2-liter bottle of water in my backpack, and I'd go to the high school and run the bleachers. And so the weight was heavier, and the bleacher run was more extensive. So the first time I did it, I was done after one, I was done. And then every week I'd add another layer and another layer and more water and so forth. And so by the time I actually had to do the big goal, I was ready. I was ready with that. And for the job search, I loved this thing. I put in Google Images, and I put in goal setting or to-do list. I put in to-do list. But I loved this. This little thing says, here's my goals for today. Here's my goals for tomorrow. Here's my goals for this week, and here's my goals for the month. So you're thinking in real time and then on into a little bit of the future as well. Record, document, assess, and learn. You did this at work. You had to always record. You had to keep copies of things. You had to document what you did. Lessons learned, failure analysis, all of you are used to doing that sort of thing, and the same thing has to happen with whatever your goal is. You keep spreadsheets of what you've done, whom you've talked to, which resume you sent. Did this interview go well? Was this a disaster? What went wrong? What didn't you prepare for? What should you have brought? What should you have said? What should you not have said? Keep it in a binder, keep it in a chart. Journal. Some people keep a journal throughout their unemployment, and then they write a book about what they learned from this blip in their career path, and that makes them famous. Blog. Jim Adcock, who is the vice president of Launchpad Job Club, he's the vice president of our board of directors. When one of his prior times of being unemployed, right when people were starting to blog and nobody knew very much about it, he started a blog. And it was about two things. It was about looking for a job, and it was also about trying to create a reputation for himself as an expert at SharePoint. And so he felt that SharePoint was going to be a very marketable skill. And he was good at it, but he wasn't great at it. He needed to beef up his skills in that. So he started a blog chronicling all the things that he was doing in both of those areas. So he said, in order to get better at SharePoint and to help me look for a job, I've joined the SharePoint user group in Austin, and then eventually he joined the SharePoint user group in San Antonio, and then he became a speaker of the both of them. And when a speaker would talk, he would give a review of the presentation on his blog, and then he would say, this is very similar to an article that I just read, and he'd add that to it. And he became known through that blog as an expert at SharePoint, and he also became known through that blog as somebody who was a job seeker. And at least 2, maybe more of the jobs that he ended up getting came because recruiters were able to find him through that blog and identify him. And then even after that, he became known as an expert at SharePoint. So companies that were looking to hire SharePoint people would say, hey, I know you're the SharePoint guy. We're looking for a SharePoint expert. Can you recommend somebody to us? So the documentation was what created his reputation. And at the end of every day, look back and say, you know, what did I do? Did I accomplish today? Did I meet somebody? Did I help somebody? And at the beginning of the day, set goals and say, maybe at the beginning of every single day, say, I'm going to meet at least 3 people today. And one of them is going to tell me something that's going to mean something to me. And I'm going to help at least one of them. And that's your goal for the day. Be helpful, learn something, meet people, and at the end of the day, say, did I meet those goals? In your job search, as soon as you come out of an interview, write down the interview questions that they asked. And if you had a preparation form for that interview, on the back of that form, write down the questions they asked, and if any of them gave you a hard time, make sure that you also notate that. Don't miss those questions ever again. And you will have, by the end of your job search, a body of interview questions that you might be asked at your next time to get laid off. So all of that is useful. Don't ever forget those. Learn from the things that you screw up. The advice from Sean, I love this. He said to these young people, he said, if you don't get any interviews this year, don't stop preparing. You're preparing for next year. That's hard to take when you're looking for a job. But it's all valuable, it's all good. And he also said, and this is a millennial, this is a young person. We all say that they're aimless. They're aimless and undisciplined. This guy was incredibly disciplined. And he said, you need to be prepared to sacrifice for what you want. You need to be prepared to work harder than you've ever worked before to get the job you want. And don't ever stop. Keep preparing. If you don't get an interview this year, you're preparing for next year. But keep on preparing, keep on learning, keep on getting better at what you do. And throughout the whole process, be compassionate and help others. Some people do that through Leap to Success. Some people do that through their church, through other organizations. Volunteer, help people, provide information. It all comes back to you, and if it doesn't come back to you, it's going to come back to you later. But always do that. And eventually, in each case, you will be successful. And then as soon as you're successful, set new goals. New goals for physical attainment, new goals for jobs. That's the White House. Did you get that?